Okay, so at this stage we're making the finger joint, and you're going to use a piece of wood that's called 2x2, which means it's 2 inches by 2 inches across. It's slightly smaller than that because it's called planed down 2x2. So they've taken a layer off to make it smooth and make it all level. So this piece of wood should roughly be 150 millimeters long. So you're just going to half the distance. So remember, you put your finger up against the edge, and then you just mark the halfway marker. So half of 150, 75 millimeters, 7.5 centimeters. And just remember to check that it is 7.5 by 7.5 by just positioning it at the halfway marker and at the end, and then both sides should be the same. So just check it. Okay, so once it's checked, you can use the set square to just mark a 90-degree line to the edge, and then mark the sides as well. So when you're sawing, you know that you're sawing straight down. You just keep an eye on it. Remember that the stock needs to be pushed firmly up against the edge. Now at this stage, push it up against the edge of the bench hook and pull back 3 times, the way you've previously done, just to get the alignment right. And then you push through firmly. Remember, your index finger should be on the right hand side of the saw. Yeah, this hand should be holding the piece of wood firmly in place, and just keep checking it. Your head should be directly over the saw, so you can see both sides of the saw blade. Just try and keep it as straight as you can. If it keeps moving around like that, you can clamp it with a G-clamp in place against the bench hook, so it doesn't move around. But if you're pushing forward, it should be fine. So you should push against the bench hook. Okay. Okay, so at this stage, the edges are quite rough. So if you just use a sanding board or a bit of sandpaper, just sand off the edges so you don't get a splinter. And repeat on the other piece. Now, once you've done that, you are going to mark the width of the piece of wood. Okay, so you make sure the one edge is perfectly up against the edge, check it with your finger, and mark a dart on the other side. So you've got the width of the piece of wood. And use your set square again, just to mark 90 degrees, and you're going to loop it all the way around. Hopefully it should meet up at the other end. If it's slightly off, it'll be fine, but just try to get it as close to meeting up when you get to the other side as you can. Okay, and then repeat on the other one. So you do exactly the same thing. So we need the width of the other piece of wood. Okay, I'll just fast forward this bit. Just make sure that the stock is firmly up against the edge, otherwise it won't meet up. Okay, now I'm going to use the chisel. So the chisel I'm going to use here is a 12mm chisel, but a 13, and even a bigger one would be fine for this, just as long as you've got one section here and one section on this bit here, and then you've got your chiseling in the middle, and you use the same chisel all the way through. So I'm going to use the chisel as like a little template, just so I can mark the width of the chisel for marking out. Make sure it's central, so put it in the right in the middle, between the two pieces of wood, and put a dot on either side. And then you can repeat on the other piece of wood. Now, at this stage, you can use a marking gauge. So set the distance from the stock to the spur to one of the dots. Okay, so just then tighten it with the thumb screw. Nice tight, and then slide down and do it along the top and along the other side. Like so. And then just turn it around and do the same thing on the side. If the dots don't quite line up, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that you use that same distance all the time so it's central. And then run your pencil line in the groove that the marking gauge is used or was created, just so you can see it a bit clearer. And then use exactly the same marking gauge setup again. So it's really important that the same distance is used for both pieces. Just make sure it's all the way around, and then you repeat on the twist the piece of wood around, and then repeat on the other side. Okay, so they both should look exactly the same as this stage. Now at this point, I'm going to scribble on the sections that I want to remove. So you can see on this one, I'm going to remove this middle bit. And on this one, I'm going to remove the outer sections. So I'm making sure that I do it all the way around it so I don't end up cutting off the wrong bits. So all that needs to go, and just the central bit on that one needs to go. And then this bit will then slot into this afterwards when it's being cut out. Okay, so at this stage, I'm going to position my first piece of wood, which is I'm going to get rid of the outside bits first, because that just is a simple sawing exercise, whereas this one will need the chisel later. So I'm going to clamp, because it's only a very small piece of wood, it's difficult to hold. So I'm going to clamp it onto the bench hook with a quick release clamp, pull back 3 times. I'm going to saw down to the first line that I've created. Make sure you check it and you're sawing as straight as you can. So you need to make sure that you are constantly checking this, because if you saw too deep, you'll make the middle section too weak. Okay, flip it over and then do the same thing on the other side. So then you saw down again to that first line. Again, just be really careful you don't saw too deep. And really do make sure that you stop at the line. Okay, now at this stage, I'm going to position the piece of wood at 45 degrees so that I can see this side and the top if I'm looking over it. And I am sawing on the waist side of the line, which is this side, not in the middle of the line, because I don't want to take anything off this middle section. So I'm going to pull back 3 times and then carefully saw down to this marker here, and make sure you don't saw too deep. Okay, so you stop there, and then I've done the same thing on the other side. So pull back on the waist side of the line, and I'm going to saw again down to this point and stop when I'm up to that bit. Okay, flip it over and then repeat on the other side. Again on the waist side of the line, and I'm going to saw down again to this line here, and then repeat on the other side, saw down to this point. Now place it vertically in, and then there should be like a little gap in the middle that I need to get rid of. Just saw right down to the bottom, and then that side piece of wood should come off. Okay. Now you can repeat, but you're going to do it on the middle section now, and you're going to make sure you saw on the waist side of the line, which is the middle, the right hand. In this case, it'd be the right hand side of that line. So it's the middle section you're removing. So you saw on the middle bit, middle side of the line. And again, I'm going to saw down to this line here. And then do the same thing on the other side. If you don't saw on the waist side of the line, then when you come to join them together, it'll be a really loose fit because you'll have removed bits that you don't need to. So in order for it to be a really strong wood joint, I know you need to do that. Make sure you saw on the waist side of the line. Okay, now place it vertically at this point, and then you're going to saw down to that line again, so it should be fully right down to the line. Okay, now at this stage, I'm just going to clamp it into an engineer's vise. You can just clamp it down to the table with a G-clamp. In some ways, the table would be better because when the chisel hits the metal on the engineer's vise, it can blunt the chisel. So if you are going to use an engineer's vise, only chisel to halfway and then flip it over and then chisel down to halfway again. Just be really careful with the chisel. Now you're going to use the same chisel that you marked out with before, so that the width is correct. And you're going to place it vertically, and I'm angling it slightly into the wood. What we do is I'm just taking away a chunk at a time. So it's the flat side of the chisel to the side that you want to keep. The bevel is on the waist side. The bevel is like the little angle on the chisel. So you make sure that the flat side is on the side you want to keep. You go down about 2 or 3 millimeters, and then you can then come at it from the end and just chisel that bit away, and it should just wedge it off. And you repeat on the other side. So you get down to halfway. So line it up carefully, angle it slightly in, but you can do it vertically or slightly in, and then again remove that section. Okay, looking at 2 or 3 millimeters or 4 millimeters each time. Just take your time. You want to try and avoid having like a little hill in the middle. So if you angle it slightly inwards, you should stop that from happening. Because if there's a little hill in the middle, then this section won't go into it properly, or it'll just won't fully fit flush with the piece of wood. And hopefully they should fit together nice and tightly. Should be a nice tight fit. Don't hit it with a hammer and try and force it in, because you'll split your 2 pieces of wood. If it doesn't quite fit, you'll need to file it down, or you can chisel a little bit more away. Okay, thank you.